Hey guys, welcome back to another video. I'm being joined by Mixed Kicks in this video. I won't be mentioning every single good or bad thing from each game, because if I did, well, the video would be really long. So let's start with Rogue. Rogue Lineage is a permadeath game which was released in 2019, and I actually played a month or two after release. I can say that Rogue Lineage was harder to get into than Deepwoken, as the information was vague, and the game had a much smaller community, so there wasn't much information. And class trainers were constantly being moved around because information was getting leaked. This is a good thing because I'm assuming the devs wanted the game to be hard and wanted you to explore. One good thing to note is that in Rogue, your progression definitely felt more rewarding than Deepwoken's, as wiping in Rogue was much more apparent than Deepwoken. But while Rogue's progression was more rewarding, it wasn't as immersive, and I'll explain why. One thing in Rogue that I feel like isn't talked about much is the orderly and chaotic system. I think it was heavily flawed because it didn't feel important. When I first joined the game, I would look for orderly players since they were supposed to be quote unquote good, but I got ganked anyways. You could literally get a chaotic class and just drink some Tespians and go back to being orderly. There were a few reasons behind this, one of them being so you don't get affected by Master Illusionist Dominus. But that aside, Rogue Lineage had some iconic and memorable locations, like the Tundra, which is to this day my favorite location, even including Deepwoken. When you were in the Tundra, you'd be cautious and be looking behind your back 24/7. At times, it felt like a horror game, because you don't know when you could have gotten ganked, when you least expect it. In Deepwoken, that wasn't really the case, as you didn't have much at stake as Rogue did. Now let's talk about the combat. Well, for the most part, I think it was okay, but there was clearly a problem with it, and that's how unbalanced it could be at times. Honestly, it was whoever lands the first combo win. However, when you did land that combo, you would feel like an absolute god. But if you got hit by that same combo, it wouldn't feel nowhere as good, honestly. But to be honest, one could argue that it's a result of how far you came, and that you finally came to get your ideal build. Tomeless was also much needed for build, and to me it made mage classes feel less important. You know there's a problem when you have to go Tomeless to even make your build viable, like Spy. However, ganking with friends in Rogue was much more fun than ganking with friends in Deepwoken. It made a lot of good memories. In conclusion, Rogue is a good game. It had its flaws, but it's a good game nonetheless.
So the Rogue Lineage progression was basically the easiest thing you could do in any game if you had a clan or a guild. Now most people will probably be saying it wasn't easy at all even if you had a clan or a guild, but to get to Ultra was basically straightforward and easy.
All the counts and friends.
Exactly, just like Desired said, the chaotic and orderly, basically the easiest things you could get, and they didn't matter later on because you can easily just change your chaotic to turn into orderly.
Yeah.
It really didn't show it didn't make the class feel important at all when you're going that class. It just felt like oh, let me get the class and then I have to get Tomeless right afterwards so that it can be meta or something.
You know what? To add on to your point, it almost felt like a speed run, because after you would get your class, you would go for Tomeless right away. Every time I made a new class in Rogue, like a new slot or character, what do you call it, I would not think of it as merely progression, but just a speed run. That's one bad thing about Rogue. It felt like a PvP game. It didn't feel like an exploration game, world building, or anything. At that point,
yeah, it's supposed to be that too.
Yeah.
Now I'm going to talk about player friendliness within Rogue and Deepwoken. Rogue player friendliness is basically non-existent. There's no playing field, like mid-level field with the players. It's just get ganked or don't get ganked or get rotted or something like that. And that's another problem with the chaotic and orderly system, is that there's quests within Rogue Lineage that will give you such a good amount of chaotic or orderly that you would stop hunting people down.
Yeah.
And it also tells you nothing when you buy the game as well.
There wasn't even a hierarchy system. Like Deepwoken, it feels like there's a hierarchy system, you know? Like,
yeah,
whenever I see a player in Deepwoken, like a high progressed one, I'm like, oh, it's just another player, you know? Maybe he'll attack me, maybe he'll not. But in Rogue, I'm ready to fight whenever I see another Ultra. I'm literally ready to fight. Most of the time, in my experience, I got ganked by almost every Ultra I saw.
Yeah, that's a really problem when trying to get into a game. I really don't know how Rogue Lineage even survived in the first place to have like a constant of 2,000 players.
Well, I don't know what I think. It was just, like, the potential threat of wiping just made it feel thrilling, you know? Some players actually
Yeah,
like that feeling.
bruh, like that's literally the only thing that held Rogue Lineage together. And it's kind of sad to say that, oh, me getting wiped is like the thrilling part of it, and then finding a PD and popping it. It's like addiction. It's like addiction at that point. You
Yeah,
know
I
what I
see
mean?
what you mean. I see what you mean. Yeah.
Like, oh, now I need to get a PD and pop it. Like, bro.
Okay, my final words for like this segment is that Rogue was a fun game, but it didn't have much variety, like amongst like the enemies, class, weapons, etc. Like there's only really
Yeah,
like a few enemies you could farm for XP, but most of the time you'd probably go straight to Shriekers or zombie screams if you chose
DOIs.
to.
Yeah,
Yeah.
zombies groups too.
Alright. Well, Mix, what's your conclusion for Rogue Lineage?
In all honesty, Rogue was just like a gotcha game at every corner. Let's
Mm.
let's go to Crypt and see if I get a ruby or trinkets to get enough bank to get my dagger, to see if I could get someone to hunt down. Maybe I'll win a fight. Because remember, these people don't have much combat experience, so maybe I'll win a fight by cheesing or maybe use my guild. Once I get that, so on and so forth, and then next thing you know, it's just you rolling at Sky Castle, trading for PD or looking for PD, not getting PD, stuff like that.
Deepwoken is a permadeath game which was released last year in 2021, in which I played on release. I can definitely say that on release I had more fun as I played with my friends and was excited to get that early Rogue Lineage feeling of not having much information about anything and just simply exploring. Off the bat, I noticed that Deepwoken's world was much more beautiful and felt way more immersive. The sound design felt organic, and I was so immersed into the game that for the first few days I was simply admiring the landscape and environment. The developers did a really good job on making it feel like a permadeath game. Now, I can't say that Deepwoken was hard to get into, progression-wise as well, and that's not necessarily a problem, as it's a result of the permadeath genre of a game, unforgiving and hard. Eventually, I started to explore other islands with friends, and we definitely had a good time, but we were also wiping a lot. Imagine trying to gang up on a Sharko without any experience. Yeah, it wasn't a good time. Uncovering the world of Deepwoken was an amazing experience in which that feeling is gone now. Both Rogue and Deepwoken suffer from this problem. Once you discover everything, or everything you need to know about the game, some of the magic that you experienced at the start of the game is gone. But honestly, that was going to happen anyways, and that's not the developer's fault. Now, I can say that Deepwoken information was getting passed around a lot more than Rogue, as the game was much bigger, and the community was bringing in players that never even played Rogue. It essentially became a mainstream game on the front page. Now, Deepwoken had a lot more variety than Rogue. The weapons, armors, clothing, mantras, and etc. The talent card system was the best thing they could have added to Deepwoken, but it also had one problem that I noticed. Your build would eventually become outdated, as when you reach max level, or had enough talent cards, new talent cards would eventually get released, potentially overshadowing your current ones. Now, if anything, this does encourage players to make new builds, and to not just stick with their current one. This system was much better than Rogue's progression system, as that would mean the meta is constantly changing and encouraging diverse playstyles. There were prerequisites on getting certain talent cards, however, some of them were purely RNG, which was quite annoying. But the combat is nowhere near as unbalanced as Rogue's combat system. The game encourages parrying, feinting, timing, and mixing up your combos. One thing I will give the Rogue over Deepwoken is wiping in general. Wiping in Deepwoken was quite rare if you knew what you were doing, and when you end up in the depths, you can really just fight the Enforcer, which is one of the easiest enemies in the game. The whole idea of the depths is really cool, but it doesn't feel challenging enough. Now honestly, that's everything I currently have to say. I'm not going to list every single good and bad thing, as like I said, it would be a much longer video. In conclusion, I think Deepwoken is the better game, and I think it's better by a long shot if we're talking objectively. However, Rogue will always have that nostalgic feeling in which I don't think Deepwoken has yet captured. Thank you to Mixkicks for voicing his opinion. I'll leave his channel link in the description below. I'll see you guys in the next video. Peace.